Hello, this is State Representative Robert Martwick, and this is my latest episode of Straight Talk Common Sense Solutions. I'm here in my office in Springfield, Illinois, in our state capital, and we are just finished the sixth day of our special session here in Springfield. So normally the legislative session ends on May 31st, at which date we pass a budget. Well, once again, for the third legislative year in a row, we didn't pass a budget. We had scheduled to come back. We had not adjourned the session. We did what was called continuing session, where we said we would come back at the end of June. But the governor issued a proclamation calling us down here. We would have been down here anyway, but that's okay. He issued a special proclamation. And that brought us down here for 10 days starting on June 20th and ending June 30th in order to address this budget. And so I wanted to talk to you specifically about this special session, this budget update, what's been going on for the last 6 days, what you can expect for the next 4, and what the likelihood is that we'll actually get a budget done. Before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about the budget, a little background about the budget, okay? So we've had no budget since 2015 when Governor Rauner took office. At that point, as many of you know, we had a tax increase that had been made temporary. It expired. We thought about extending it. Governor Rauner said absolutely not, do not extend it. He said he could solve the problem. But we've had no budget since 2015. On day one of his office, of him taking office, we offered a compromise. What kind of compromise did we offer? A financial compromise for a financial problem. We said we will offer to make spending cuts and a combination of spending cuts and tax increases to balance the budget. So we have a balanced budget, which is the best thing you can do. It is fiscally responsible. It's the right thing to do. May not be what everybody wants to do. A lot of people don't want cuts. Certainly no one wants tax increases, but it's the responsible thing to do. Governor Rauner said no budget. He said he would have no budget unless we addressed his political agenda. Since that time, Governor Rauner has presented 3 budgets. All of them were massively unbalanced. The last one had a hidden $4.7 billion tax increase in it, and that was at a minimum. It definitely could have had more. That's the background of what's gone on here since we started. What's been the financial effect of that? Well, again, if you've been watching these videos, you know we've got unpaid bills that have grown from $5 billion to $15 billion in unpaid bills. We pay a 12% annual interest on those unpaid bills. The accumulation of these unpaid bills and the uncertainty, because we haven't passed a budget in 3 years, which is crazy, has led to successive credit downgrades. And what is those credit downgrades meant was that those credit downgrades was testified by a bond house expert that those credit downgrades make our ability to borrow more money. That's typical of any state. You have current money coming in, but you have obligations. We pay, get this, $1 billion more in interest than we would if we had just solved a budget and been responsible. So $10 billion of additional unpaid bills, $1 billion a year annually in juice, right? In interest that we don't have to be paying if we just put our house in order. We have an annual deficit that's running between $6 and $8 billion, and those 3 years of additional debt accumulation mean that whatever tax increase we do now needs to be higher than it would have needed to be 3 years ago. And the longer we wait, the higher that tax increase will have to be. This is an interesting graphic. This was provided by Comptroller Mendoza's office. I want to give her credit for it. But this shows right here, 6/30/15 is roughly when we decided that we were no longer going to have a budget. That was the first time that we missed our budget deadline. Governor Rauner took office in January. And you can see this is debt from, you can't see this number here, this is from 2010, 10, 11, 12. And you can see our debt was going up and down, and it reached a high around here in 12, but then with some of the spending reforms and the additional tax increase by Quinn, it slowly crept its way down to the point where it was here. And then this is since Governor Rauner took office. This is our increase in debt. So it's a great graphic. It shows you where we went from $5 billion to over $15 billion in unpaid bills, and that is just unbelievable, and this is what's really affecting our government. Also, additionally, besides the financial effects that I just talked about, social effects, right? We all know about these. Again, if you've watched my videos, massive cuts. State universities and tuition assistance have been cut, making it very hard for working class and poor students to go back to college, and many of them have not. And this is not just an opportunity lost for productive young kids, but it's an opportunity loss for our state as we lose potential future employees. And that's what potential employers look for, is what's your workforce like. So this is bad economics. We've cut in-home care for seniors and disabled, forcing them from less expensive in-home care to more expensive nursing home care, right? So we were forced to cut a program that's going to cost us more money in the future. Makes no sense. Mental health and addiction treatment, of course, these leads to all sorts of problems when we stop providing those to people who need them. Teen and after-school programs, again, if you're not providing productive alternatives, you see an uptick in crime, and we have, and this is just, again, socially wrong, and it's economically wrong, so it makes no sense. The $8 billion question, will we pass a budget, right? That's what we came down here to do 6 days ago. Well, what have we been doing in those 6 days? We've been going through a series of hearings and a lot of meetings every single day. Meetings every single day. What are we meeting about? We're meeting on negotiating a budget. We are meeting on negotiating many of the requests that the governor said he wanted, right? So the governor said he wants workers' compensation reform. We are negotiating workers' compensation reform packages. The governor wants a property tax freeze. We are negotiating a property tax freeze, and I believe tomorrow we'll be hearing that in the Revenue Committee and moving a bill to the floor that we could vote on. That is a property tax freeze. We are, I am personally, as the chairman of the Pension Committee, negotiating some amount of pension reform that we could do that hopefully save the system's money as we go forward. So there are things that need to do, and we are working on those constantly. That's what we've been doing over the last 6 days. In fact, yesterday was a long hearing about proposed pension changes, and I presided over that. It was very good information. So let's talk about what's needed to get it done. How do we get this budget done? Well, very simply, we need to do three things, right? We need to have three things present. One, we have to have a desire to solve the problem. Number two, we have to have honesty about what it will take. And number three, we have to have a willingness to compromise. So let me tell you something. When I started crafting this on the first day of this special session, I was very pessimistic. I'm happy to say that I'm optimistic, that there is hope that we could get this done. Why? Because these things have changed dramatically since we got here 6 days ago. So it's a good reason that we're here. Number one, a desire to solve the problem. Well, I will tell you that when we came down here, I wouldn't have thought that there was a real desire to solve this problem, which is terrible. But why would I say that? Well, the governor issued a proclamation that said we need to get down here and solve the problem. And on the very same day, he sent out mailers to Democratic districts where Democratic representatives are. And he put on ads on TV slamming us and saying that we were the root cause of all the problems and all we wanted to do was raise taxes. When he knows very well that the only way this budget gets solved is by a tax increase. So if he knows that the only way the budget gets solved is if Democrats and Republicans vote for a tax increase, why would you send out mailers and TV commercials slamming people for a potential tax vote? That means you don't want to get a deal done. But I've seen a change there, not on his end, but on the rank and file. And I mean this. The rank and file have been, you can see a desire. What's the good news? The Speaker met with the leader of the Republicans, not Governor Rauner, but the legislative leaders of the Republicans, so the Speaker and the President of the Senate got together and they met, and they are working on these problems. Rank and file are working on these problems. As I mentioned, we are negotiating things. Honesty about what it will take is the second thing. And again, up until now, you've got a governor who invites you down here knowing full well that the only way to solve the problem is a tax increase. As I said, that was in his own budget. And then he's beating up people for it. That's not honesty about what it will take. But what I see is Republicans publicly acknowledging that it's going to require some amount of tax increase in order to get this balanced budget. That's honesty. It's not easy. No one wants to hear about a tax increase. I talk about it honestly, and people yell at me all the time. I get it. I don't want one. But if I'm honest about what it will take, that's part of it. I'm starting to see that from both sides. That's a good sign. Finally, a willingness to compromise. And again, as I mentioned, I see members meeting. I see members compromising. The question is can we get this done before Friday? I'm confident. I feel good about it. One of the things that we've talked about in this budget process is non-budget items or reforms, right? And that all depends on what your thoughts of reforms are. So what I would tell you is that the governor has demanded some things in non-budgetary items. And yesterday in a meeting with the Republican leaders, the speaker asked the Republican leaders if they still wanted to, I guess I'm going through the wrong thing here. Let me get back to this last slide. If they still wanted to pursue non-budgetary items, and they said they did. And what he said was, well, that's fine, but I've got some non-budgetary items of my own. The good news is that many of the non-budgetary items that they want are non-budgetary items that we want, with some slight differences. And remember that last slide about compromise? Well, that's where this comes in. So they want a property tax freeze, workers' compensation changes, and school funding reform. We want school funding reform, workers' compensation, and managed care changes. These are very close. Two of the three are exactly the same, with some slight differences, right? For us, a big thing is school funding reform. We have a bill, Senate Bill 1, that would change the way that we fund education. They have a bill. What's the difference between our bill and their bill? Well, our bill's been worked on for about 10 years, and every single person who is an advocate for education or is an education expert supports our bill. The only ones that support their bill is the governor. Okay? So we have made a demand. No. Everyone supports our version of doing this. It helps everyone. It makes every district in the state better off. We're going with ours. That's going to be one of our demands. We'll see where that goes. It's open to compromise. But we are closing in on these things. So I feel good. I feel optimistic. I feel like there is hope. Things may change. It's Monday. I plan on doing this every day. I will give you a much briefer update. Today was a sort of a summary of what's gone on for the last 6 days and a look forward at the next 4. But I'll give you a daily update each day. Tomorrow I'll be meeting again to try and work out some pension issues. My colleagues that are working on the specifics of the budget will be meeting again tomorrow with their Republican counterparts. The ones that are working on workers' compensation will be meeting with their Republican counterparts. The ones working on funding reform will be meeting with their counterparts. We will be working to find that compromise. I'm hopeful that it can get it done. You can advocate, reach out wherever you can, to the governor's office, to senators, to state representatives. You can feel free to call me and tell us to compromise. Tell us that compromise is not a bad thing. We can find a deal that everyone can live with and finally put our state back on a path to fiscal responsibility and financial stability. That's what we need more than anything else. We need to stop the bleeding. We need to repair those, start paying down those debts, secure the state for the future of the next generation at least, and make it a little bit easier for this generation. So that's it for now. That's an update on what's been going on. By all means, as always, reach out to me here at Facebook. Make a comment. You can email me at repmartwick@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Robert Martwick. Always happy to have you join me on any of these videos. Start a discussion. I'm always happy to answer questions. So thanks for watching, and we'll try and tune in tomorrow, maybe a little bit earlier. I'll keep you informed. I'll try and put out a thing ahead of time that gives you an update about when I expect to be going live. But we'll give you an update of what's going on here in Springfield. So thanks for watching. Have a great evening.